I want you to take a moment and reflect on this powerful truth. If God is for us, who can be against us? That's not just a question, it's a declaration, a bold reminder that we are never alone, never outnumbered, and never without purpose. Life is a battlefield. Every day you wake up, step out of bed, and face challenges, some seen, others unseen. There are forces in this world that will try to tell you who you are and who you're not. They'll whisper in your ear that you're not good enough, not strong enough, not worthy. But let me tell you something, when God is on your side, no weapon formed against you shall prosper. Now, I'm not saying there won't be storms. The winds will blow, the waters will rise, and sometimes you'll feel like you're drowning. But you've got to know who holds the sea in the palm of his hand. You've got to believe that the same God who brought you through yesterday will carry you into tomorrow. But here's the thing, it's not just about what God will do for you, it's about what you do when you know he's for you. You see, faith without action is dead. If you believe that God is for you, you've got to walk like it, talk like it. When you step into that job interview, when you walk into that classroom, when you face that mountain in your life, you've got to stand tall. Not because of your own strength, but because you know the one who strengthens you. And let's talk about those who stand against you, because they will come. Haters, doubters, and enemies will rise. But hear me when I say this, their power is nothing compared to the power of God working in you. They may try to block your blessings, but what God has for you is for you. No man, no system, no circumstance can take it away. I'm reminded of David standing before Goliath. Everybody told him, you're too small, you don't have what it takes, but David wasn't looking at Goliath's size, he was looking at God's greatness. And with one stone, he took that giant down. The presence of God is not just an abstract idea or a distant concept, it is a living, breathing reality that can transform the way we face life. His presence is the assurance that no matter what comes against us, we are never alone and never powerless. Life is full of uncertainties, obstacles, and battles that can test the very core of who we are. We've all experienced moments where we feel inadequate, overwhelmed, or simply unsure of how to proceed. But the knowledge of God's presence provides a foundation of strength that nothing and no one can shake. It's the ultimate source of courage, resilience, and peace. When we recognize that God is with us, it changes how we approach everything. Fear begins to lose its grip because we know we're not fighting our battles alone. We don't have to rely solely on our strength, intelligence, or resources because we are backed by a power far greater than anything in this world. That power, his presence, is a shield, a guide, and a constant reminder that we are valued and protected. Think about the times in your life when you faced challenges that seemed insurmountable. Maybe it was a personal loss, a financial struggle, or a relationship that fell apart. In those moments, it's easy to feel like you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. But when you stop and acknowledge that God is with you, the weight starts to lift. His presence doesn't necessarily remove the challenge, but it equips you to endure it. It gives you the strength to stand firm when everything around you is shaking. God's presence also brings clarity. In a world full of noise and distractions, it's easy to lose focus on what truly matters. When you invite God into your life and acknowledge his presence, he illuminates your path. He provides wisdom and discernment that go beyond human understanding. There's a stillness that comes with knowing that the creator of the universe is walking alongside you. In that stillness, you find the clarity to make decisions, to persevere, and to trust the process even when you can't see the outcome. The power of God's presence is not just about surviving life's challenges, it's about thriving in the midst of them. His presence empowers you to rise above circumstances that would otherwise defeat you. It enables you to walk into situations with confidence, knowing that you have a divine advocate. This confidence isn't arrogance, it's faith. It's the unwavering belief that you are never alone, that you have access to a source of strength that never runs dry. One of the most remarkable things about God's presence is its ability to bring peace in the middle of chaos. Think about the story of Jesus calming the storm while his disciples were panicking. The storm didn't faze him because he knew who he was and the authority he carried. When we embrace God's presence, we tap into that same peace. It doesn't mean the storms of life won't come, they will, but it means we can face them with a calmness that confounds the world. It's a peace that surpasses all understanding, a peace that guards our hearts and minds. God's presence is also deeply personal. It's not a one-size-fits-all experience. It meets you right where you are, tailored to your unique needs and circumstances. For some, his presence might feel like a comforting embrace during times of grief. For others, it might be the boldness to speak up when fear tries to silence you. no matter how it manifests the beauty of his presence, is that it is always exactly what you need, exactly when you need it. There's also a transformative power in God's presence. It doesn't just strengthen you for external battles, it changes you from the inside out. When you spend time in his presence, you start to see yourself the way he sees you, worthy, loved, and capable. You begin to shed the insecurities, doubts, and fears that have held you back. You start to walk with a renewed sense of identity, not defined by the world's standards, but by his. And let's not forget the role of God's presence in community. It's not just an individual experience, it's something that can be shared and multiplied. When two or more are gathered in his name, he is there. This collective presence creates an atmosphere of unity, encouragement, and shared strength. It reminds us that we are not just individuals walking our own paths, but part of a greater story, a greater purpose. The presence of God also teaches us dependence, not in a way that makes us weak, but in a way that makes us strong. In a culture that glorifies self-reliance, it can be hard to admit that we need help. But God's presence invites us to let go of the need to have it all figured out. It's an invitation to lean on him, to trust him, and to draw from his endless well of strength. When we fully embrace the reality of God's presence, it shifts our perspective on everything. Challenges become opportunities to see his power at work. Setbacks become setups for something greater. Even failures become lessons that refine us and draw us closer to him. His presence doesn't promise a life free of hardship, but it does promise a life filled with purpose, strength, and the assurance that we are never alone. And perhaps most importantly, God's presence is always available. It's not something you have to earn or qualify for. It's a gift freely given, waiting for you to embrace it. No matter how far you've wandered or how unworthy you may feel, his presence is there, ready to meet you with open arms. That is the ultimate source of strength, knowing that the creator of all things chooses to be with you, to guide you, and to empower you for whatever lies ahead. Faith is not just a matter of belief, it is the driving force behind every meaningful step we take. Believing that God is with you and for you requires more than mere acknowledgement, it demands action. When you have faith, it changes how you move, how you speak, and how you engage with the world. True faith cannot remain idle. It compels you to live in a way that reflects your trust in God's promises. It calls you to align your steps with your convictions and to act as though what you believe is already manifesting in your life. Living out faith means carrying yourself with the confidence of someone who knows the creator of the universe is in their corner. It means walking into challenges with boldness, even when the odds seem stacked against you. Faith is not a passive posture. It is an active choice to rise up and move forward, trusting that God will meet you along the way. If you truly believe that God is for you, then your actions will reflect that belief. You'll step out, not with hesitation, but with the assurance that you're backed by divine authority. Faith in action is a declaration. It is a way of telling the world and even yourself that you trust God more than your circumstances. When you act on faith, you're not just acknowledging that God is capable, you're demonstrating that you believe he is willing and working on your behalf. This kind of faith doesn't wait for everything to fall into place. It steps out in obedience and trust, even when the path ahead is unclear. It's about moving forward, not because you see the whole picture, but because you trust the one who holds it. The story of Peter walking on water is a perfect example of faith in action. Peter could have stayed in the safety of the boat, but when he saw Jesus walking on the waves, he stepped out. That act of faith was not just about believing Jesus could do it. It was about believing that Peter could do it too, through the power of Jesus. It's easy to have faith when you're in the boat, where it's comfortable and safe. But true faith calls you to step out onto the water, to take risks, and to trust that God will sustain you even when the waves rise. Faith that is alive and active also speaks through your words. When you believe that God is for you, it transforms the way you communicate. You begin to speak with authority and hope, declaring what you know to be true instead of echoing the doubts and fears that try to creep into your mind. Words have power, and when they are rooted in faith, they can shift atmospheres and bring encouragement to others. Speaking in faith doesn't mean denying reality. It means declaring a greater reality, the reality of God's promises. Your actions become a testament to your faith. When you live as though you believe in God's provision, people notice. When you extend kindness, show forgiveness, and pursue justice, you're not just doing good deeds, you're reflecting the heart of God. Faith that is put into action is contagious. It inspires others to believe and to step out in their own lives. It shows the world what it looks like to trust in something greater than yourself. Walking by faith also requires consistency. It's not a one-time decision or something you do only when it's convenient. It's a daily choice to align your life with what you believe. It's in the small, unseen moments where faith is tested and proven. Do you keep going when the results aren't immediate? Do you hold on when it feels like nothing is changing? Faith in action means showing up every day, trusting that God is working even when you can't see it. There's a level of humility that comes with living out faith. It's recognizing that your own strength and wisdom are not enough and surrendering to God's guidance. This surrender doesn't make you weak, it empowers you to move in alignment with God's will. When you act in faith, you're acknowledging that the outcome is in His hands, not yours. And because of that, you can move forward without fear of failure. Even when things don't go as planned, faith reminds you that God is still in control, working all things together for good. Faith is also about perseverance. It's easy to take action when things are going well, but what about when the road gets tough? True faith doesn't waver in the face of adversity. It presses on, knowing that challenges are opportunities for growth and for God to show His strength. When you act on faith during difficult times, you're making a statement that your trust in God is greater than the obstacles in front of you. Faith without action is like a car without fuel. It might look good on the outside, but it won't take you anywhere. Believing in God's promises is the starting point, but acting on that belief is what brings them to life. Every step you take in faith brings you closer to the fulfillment of what God has planned for you. It's in the action that faith becomes real, tangible, and transformative. Living out faith is not always easy. It often requires stepping out of your comfort zone and doing things that don't make sense to the world. It might mean taking risks, letting go of control, or standing firm in your values when it would be easier to compromise. But these actions are what set you apart and demonstrate the depth of your trust in God. Faith in action also opens the door for miracles. When you move forward, trusting in God's provision, you create space for Him to work in ways that you could never have imagined. Miracles don't often happen when we sit back and wait. They happen when we step out and trust. Just as the Red Sea didn't part until Moses stretched out his staff, sometimes you have to take that first step before you see the breakthrough. Faith is not about perfection, it's about persistence. You don't have to have everything figured out to take a step of faith. God doesn't require you to have all the answers. He simply asks you to trust Him enough to move. Each step, no matter how small, is an act of worship, a declaration that you believe in His promises. When you walk like you believe, you're not just walking for yourself. Your faith in action has the power to impact those around you. It can inspire others to take their own steps of faith, to trust God in their own lives. Your actions become a light that points people back to Him. Faith is never just about you. It's about being a vessel through which God's love and power can flow to others. Faith in action is a journey, not a destination. It's about continually stepping out, trusting, and moving forward, even when you don't have all the answers. It's about living in a way that reflects the truth that God is with you and for you. When you truly believe that, it changes everything, not just your mindset, but your entire way of being. It transforms how you approach challenges, how you treat others, and how you see yourself. Faith that is lived out is faith that is alive, dynamic, and unstoppable. The phrase, "no weapon formed against you will prosper," is not just a comforting sentiment, it is a powerful truth rooted in the promises of God. It reminds us that while challenges, adversities, and attacks may arise, they do not have the final word in our lives. This assurance is not about denying the existence of hardships, but about affirming their inability to defeat us when we are anchored in God's strength. The imagery of a weapon is deliberate. It signifies something deliberately crafted to harm or destroy. Yet this declaration assures us that even the most carefully designed strategies against us will fail in their ultimate purpose. Weapons come in many forms. Sometimes they appear as external challenges, unexpected circumstances, personal betrayals, financial struggles, or societal injustices. At other times, they manifest internally in the form of self-doubt, fear, anxiety, or past wounds that try to hold us back. These weapons are often aimed at our identity, our purpose, and our faith, attempting to shake the foundation of who we are and whose we are. But this promise declares that no matter what form they take, these weapons cannot succeed in their intent to derail or destroy us. The assurance that these weapons will not prosper does not mean they won't be formed or even wielded against us. Life will present its share of struggles, and there will be moments when it feels like the weight of the world is pressing down. Yet the promise is that they will not prevail. They may cause temporary setbacks or discomfort, but they lack the power to define or defeat us. This is because God's protection surrounds us not as an impenetrable bubble that prevents all harm, but as a divine guarantee that nothing can ultimately harm our soul or our destiny when we remain in Him. Understanding this truth changes how we approach challenges. Instead of cowering in fear or despair when opposition arises, we can stand firm, knowing that the outcome is already decided. This assurance is not rooted in our own abilities or resilience, but in the unfailing power of God. It is His strength, His wisdom, and His sovereignty that render the weapons of the enemy powerless. When we grasp this, we begin to see challenges not as threats, but as opportunities to witness God's faithfulness in action. The process of weapons forming against us can often feel overwhelming. Sometimes it seems as though the odds are stacked against us, that the forces opposing us are too great to overcome. But this promise reminds us that the size of the opposition doesn't matter when compared to the power of God. Just as David faced Goliath with nothing but a sling and a few stones, we too can confront the giants in our lives, not because we are strong, but because we know who fights for us. God's promise that no weapon will prosper does not exempt us from effort or responsibility. We are called to take action, to stand firm in faith, and to persevere even when the path is difficult. This is not a passive promise, but an invitation to partner with God in the fight. It's about trusting Him enough to show up, even when the outcome isn't yet visible. It's about believing that His power is made perfect in our weakness, and that His plans for us are good, even when circumstances suggest otherwise. This promise also speaks to the intention behind the weapons. The enemy seeks to discourage, distract, and destroy, but God has the power to turn what was meant for harm into something good. Time and time again, we see examples of this in Scripture and in life. Joseph, who was sold into slavery by his own brothers, declared that what they meant for evil, God used for good. This is the essence of this promise, not that we won't face adversity, but that adversity cannot thwart God's plans for us. When weapons are formed against us, they often target our faith. Doubts creep in, fear takes hold, and it becomes tempting to question whether God is truly for us. But this promise serves as a shield in those moments of uncertainty. It reminds us that God's faithfulness is not dependent on our circumstances or emotions. His power is constant, His love is unchanging, and His plans are unstoppable. This assurance gives us the strength to hold on, to keep believing, and to keep moving forward, even when the path ahead is unclear. Weapons that form against us also have the potential to shape us in unexpected ways. While they are not intended for our good, God can use them to refine us, to strengthen our character, and to deepen our faith. The challenges we face often become the very things that prepare us for the next level of our journey. They teach us to rely on God in ways we never would have otherwise. They reveal His strength in our weakness and His faithfulness in our struggle. This promise also calls us to shift our perspective. Instead of focusing on the weapon, we are invited to focus on the one who renders it powerless. When we fix our eyes on God rather than on the challenges before us, our fear diminishes and our faith grows. It's not that the challenges disappear, but their power over us is diminished. We begin to see them for what they are: temporary obstacles, not permanent barriers. Knowing that no weapon formed against us will prosper also empowers us to live with boldness. Fear of failure, rejection, or opposition can often hold us back from pursuing our purpose. But this promise reminds us that we have nothing to fear. The outcome is already determined, and we are on the winning side. This knowledge frees us to step out in faith, to take risks, and to live fully in the calling God has placed on our lives. This assurance is not just personal, it extends to those around us. When we live with the confidence that no weapon will prosper, we become a source of encouragement and inspiration to others. Our faith becomes a testimony, showing those around us that they too can trust in God's promises. It's not about pretending that life is easy or that challenges don't exist. It's about demonstrating that even in the midst of adversity, we have a hope that cannot be shaken. The power of this promise lies not in the absence of weapons, but in the presence of God. It is His authority, His sovereignty, and His protection that render the weapons ineffective. This doesn't mean we won't feel the impact of the attacks. There will be moments of pain, frustration, and uncertainty. But it does mean that those attacks cannot define us or determine our future. They cannot separate us from God's love or derail His plans for our lives. When we truly believe that no weapon formed against us will prosper, it transforms how we live. We stop living in fear of what might go wrong and start living in anticipation of what God is going to do. We approach challenges with a sense of purpose, knowing that even in the struggle, there is a greater plan at work. We move forward with confidence, not because we have all the answers, but because we trust the one who does. The promise that no weapon will prosper is a reminder of God's sovereignty, faithfulness, and love. It assures us that no matter what comes against us, we are never alone, never defeated, and never without hope. It is a call to stand firm, to trust, and to live in the assurance that God is for us. And because of that, nothing can ultimately stand against us. Challenges are an inevitable part of life. They come in many forms: unexpected setbacks, difficult decisions, personal struggles, or even the relentless pace of the world around us. At times, they can feel overwhelming, threatening to knock us off course or diminish our sense of purpose. But when we recognize that the power of God is at work in our lives, we begin to see these challenges in a new light. They are no match for the limitless strength, wisdom, and grace of the Creator. This understanding transforms not only how we perceive our challenges, but also how we face them. God's power is not a distant force. It is an ever-present reality that sustains, guides, and equips us. When we confront challenges, it's easy to fall into the trap of relying solely on our own strength or resources. We try to figure it all out, fix it all ourselves, or carry the weight of it alone. But this approach often leads to frustration, exhaustion, and feelings of inadequacy. The truth is, we were never meant to navigate life's challenges on our own. God's power is available to us, not just as a source of comfort, but as a dynamic force that empowers us to overcome. When we acknowledge that our challenges are no match for God's power, it changes our perspective. Instead of viewing obstacles as insurmountable barriers, we begin to see them as opportunities for God to demonstrate His strength. This doesn't mean the challenges disappear or that they become easy, but it does mean they lose their ability to define or defeat us. Our focus shifts from the size of the problem to the greatness of the one who walks with us through it. Throughout Scripture, we see countless examples of God's power at work in the face of seemingly impossible situations. Whether it's parting the Red Sea for the Israelites, bringing down the walls of Jericho, or feeding thousands with just a few loaves and fishes, God's power consistently proves greater than any challenge. These stories are not just historical accounts, they are reminders of what is still true today. The same God who moved mountains and performed miracles then is the same God who is present and active in our lives now. God's power doesn't always manifest in dramatic ways. Sometimes it's found in the quiet strength to keep going when everything in you wants to give up. It's the peace that surpasses understanding when life feels chaotic. It's the wisdom to make the right decision when you're at a crossroads. It's the resilience to bounce back after a failure or setback. These moments of grace, often unnoticed by others, are evidence of God's power working in and through us. When we face challenges, one of the greatest temptations is to let fear take over. Fear has a way of magnifying problems, making them seem larger and more powerful than they really are. But fear cannot coexist with faith in the power of God. When we remind ourselves of who God is and what He is capable of, fear begins to lose its grip. We find the courage to take the next step, even when we can't see the whole path ahead. This courage is not about denying the reality of the challenge. It's about trusting in a reality that is greater, the reality of God's sovereignty and strength. Another aspect of facing challenges with God's power is the realization that we are not alone. God's presence is a constant, even in our darkest moments. When we feel like we've reached the end of our rope, His power is there to lift us up and carry us forward. This doesn't mean we won't feel the weight of our challenges, but it does mean we don't have to bear that weight alone. God's strength is made perfect in our weakness, and His grace is sufficient for every need. Sometimes the challenges we face are not external, but internal. We wrestle with doubts, insecurities, or past wounds that threaten to hold us back. These internal struggles can feel just as daunting as any external obstacle. But even here, God's power is at work. He is the healer of broken hearts, the restorer of hope, and the one who renews our minds. When we bring our struggles to Him, He meets us with compassion and strength, transforming our pain into purpose. God's power also equips us for the battles we face. He doesn't just send us into the storm, He prepares us for it. Through His Word, His Spirit, and the support of others, He provides the tools and resources we need to stand firm. This preparation doesn't always look the way we expect, but it is always sufficient. Sometimes it's the lessons learned in previous challenges that equip us for what lies ahead. Other times, it's the quiet assurance that comes from spending time in His presence. One of the most profound aspects of God's power is its ability to turn what was meant for harm into something good. Challenges often feel like setbacks, but in God's hands, they can become setups for something greater. He has a way of using even the most difficult circumstances to shape us, grow us, and position us for the future. This doesn't mean the pain or difficulty is erased, but it does mean it is never wasted. God's power brings purpose to our struggles, reminding us that He is always at work, even when we can't see it. Facing challenges with God's power also requires trust. It's one thing to believe in God's power in theory, it's another to rely on it in practice. Trusting God means letting go of the need to control every outcome and instead placing our confidence in His plan. This kind of trust doesn't come naturally. It's something we develop over time, often through the very challenges we face. As we see God's faithfulness in one situation, our trust in Him grows for the next. The power of God is not just about overcoming challenges, it's about transforming us in the process. Every trial we face has the potential to deepen our character, strengthen our faith, and refine our purpose. God's power doesn't just remove obstacles, it equips us to navigate them with grace and resilience. This transformation is one of the greatest testimonies of His work in our lives. There is also a communal aspect to facing challenges with God's power. When we share our struggles and victories with others, we encourage and inspire them to trust in God's power for their own lives. Our stories become a testament to His faithfulness, reminding those around us that they too are not alone in their challenges. God's power is not limited to individual circumstances. It flows through us to impact the lives of others. Challenges, no matter how daunting, are not the end of the story. They are moments in the journey, opportunities for God's power to be revealed and for our faith to grow. When we face them with the confidence that comes from knowing who God is, we discover a strength that is not our own. This strength carries us through the storm, enabling us to stand firm, to persevere, and to emerge on the other side stronger than before. God's power is a reminder that we are not defined by our challenges, but by the God who overcomes them. It is a call to step forward, not in our own strength, but in His. It is an invitation to trust, to believe, and to keep moving, knowing that no challenge is too great for the one who walks beside us. Living with the confidence that God is for you changes the way you move through the world. It's a shift in perspective that transforms not only how you view challenges, but also how you see yourself and your purpose. When you fully grasp that the Creator of the universe is on your side, it creates a foundation of assurance and strength that is unshakable. This confidence is not rooted in arrogance or self-sufficiency, but in the deep, abiding knowledge of God's love, His power, and His faithfulness. It is an understanding that with God on your side, nothing can truly stand against you. This confidence starts with an awareness of your identity in God. When you know that you are loved, chosen, and valued by the Almighty, it removes the need to seek validation from external sources. The world often tries to define us by our achievements, appearances, or failures, but God's perspective is different. He sees you as His beloved child, worthy and precious in His sight. This identity gives you the freedom to live authentically, without fear of rejection or the need to constantly prove your worth. It allows you to stand firm in who you are, even when the opinions of others waver. Knowing that God is for you also reshapes how you handle adversity. Life is filled with uncertainties, and there will always be moments when circumstances feel overwhelming. But confidence in God's presence and favor means you can face these moments without being paralyzed by fear or doubt. It doesn't mean you won't feel the weight of challenges, but it does mean you can carry that weight differently. Instead of succumbing to despair, you can lean on God's strength, trusting that He is working on your behalf even when you cannot see it. This confidence also fuels boldness. When you understand that God is for you, you're no longer afraid to take risks or step out in faith. Fear of failure loses its grip because you know that your success is not determined by worldly standards, but by God's plans for your life. This boldness isn't about recklessness, it's about stepping into the opportunities God places before you with the assurance that He has already prepared the way. It's about pursuing your purpose with passion, knowing that you are walking in alignment with His will. Living with this confidence changes how you pray. Instead of approaching God with hesitancy or uncertainty, you come to Him with boldness and expectation. You pray knowing that He hears you, that He cares about the details of your life, and that His power is limitless. Your prayers become less about convincing God to act and more about aligning your heart with His. This confidence in prayer is not about demanding outcomes, but about trusting that God's plans are good and that His timing is perfect. When you believe that God is for you, it also affects how you treat others. Confidence in God's favor allows you to live with an open heart, extending grace, kindness, and forgiveness to those around you. You're no longer operating from a place of scarcity where you feel the need to compete or compare. Instead, you recognize that God's blessings are abundant and that His love is limitless. This frees you to celebrate others' successes, to lift others up, and to be a source of encouragement and support. This confidence gives you the resilience to persevere. Life's journey is rarely smooth, and there will be seasons of waiting, struggle, or uncertainty. But when you know that God is for you, you can endure these seasons with hope. You understand that delays are not denials and that challenges are often opportunities for growth and refinement. This perspective helps you stay focused and grounded, even when the path ahead is unclear. It reminds you that God's plans are always greater than what you can see in the moment. Confidence in God's favor also brings peace. In a world that is often chaotic and unpredictable, this peace is a priceless gift. It's not about ignoring the realities of life, but about trusting in a reality that is greater God's sovereignty and goodness. This peace allows you to remain calm in the midst of storms, to rest in the assurance that God is in control. It's a peace that guards your heart and mind, enabling you to move through life with a sense of steadiness and assurance that cannot be shaken by external circumstances. Living with the confidence that God is for you requires trust. It's one thing to know this truth intellectually, it's another to live it out daily. Trusting God means surrendering your fears, doubts, and insecurities to Him. It means letting go of the need to control every aspect of your life and instead relying on His guidance. This trust is not passive, it's an active choice to believe in His promises and to align your actions with that belief. It's about stepping out in faith, even when the outcome is uncertain. This confidence also calls you to live a purpose. When you know that God is for you, you understand that your life has meaning and significance. You're not here by accident. You were created with intention and for a purpose. This understanding inspires you to live fully, to pursue your calling with passion, and to make a difference in the world. It reminds you that your contributions matter and that God can use your gifts and talents to accomplish incredible things. Knowing that God is for you doesn't mean life will always be easy. Challenges, disappointments, and struggles will still come, but they will not have the final say. This confidence allows you to face these moments with strength and grace, knowing that they are temporary and that God's power is greater. It reminds you that even in the darkest seasons, God is working behind the scenes, orchestrating everything for your good and His glory. This confidence is not something you have to earn or achieve. It is a gift that comes from understanding who God is and what He has done for you. It's rooted in His character, His love, His faithfulness, and His promises. When you build your life on this foundation, it transforms every aspect of your journey. It gives you the courage to dream big, the strength to overcome obstacles, and the peace to navigate uncertainty. Living with the confidence that God is for you also impacts your decisions. It gives you the clarity to make choices that align with your values and your faith. You're no longer swayed by fear of what others might think or by the pressure to conform to societal expectations. Instead, you make decisions with the assurance that God's wisdom and guidance are available to you. This confidence allows you to move forward with integrity, knowing that you are walking in obedience to His will. This confidence is not about ignoring the realities of life, but about embracing them with the assurance that God is greater than any obstacle or challenge. It's about holding on to hope, even when circumstances seem bleak. It's about living with a sense of anticipation, knowing that God's plans are good and that He is faithful to fulfill His promises. It's about trusting in His timing, even when it doesn't align with your own. When you live with the confidence that God is for you, it becomes evident to those around you. Your faith, hope, and resilience become a testimony, inspiring others to seek the same assurance in their own lives. This confidence is contagious. It encourages those who are struggling and reminds them of God's love and power. It's not about pretending to have it all together, but about pointing others to the one who holds it all together. This confidence transforms how you approach life's challenges, opportunities, and relationships. It gives you the courage to take risks, the strength to endure hardships, and the grace to navigate complexities. It reminds you that you are never alone, that God is always with you, and that His plans for you are good. It's a confidence that flows not from your circumstances, but from the unchanging truth of who God is and His unshakable commitment to you. Faith is the anchor that keeps us grounded, especially when life's storms rage around us. It is the unshakable belief in things unseen, the confident assurance in God's promises, and the deep trust that He is always in control, even when circumstances seem to say otherwise. Faith is not merely a passive feeling or abstract idea. It is an active force that shapes our decisions, strengthens our resolve, and propels us forward in the face of uncertainty. It allows us to stand firm no matter what comes our way, because we know that we are not standing alone. God is with us, and His power sustains us through it all. Faith doesn't mean the absence of doubt or fear. It doesn't mean that we never question or struggle. Instead, it is the choice to trust God in the midst of those doubts and fears. It's choosing to believe in His goodness, His love, and His plans, even when our human understanding falls short. Faith acknowledges the challenges before us, but refuses to be overwhelmed by them. It's not about denying reality, but about embracing a greater reality, the reality of God's sovereignty and faithfulness. This kind of faith is what allows us to move forward when the path ahead is unclear. It's what gives us the courage to take the first step, even when we don't know where it will lead. Faith doesn't require us to have all the answers. It simply asks us to trust the one who does. It's about leaning not on our own understanding, but on God's wisdom and guidance. It's about surrendering control, not out of resignation, but out of confidence that God's plans are always better than our own. Faith is what sustains us in times of waiting. There will be seasons in life when progress seems slow, when prayers seem unanswered, and when it feels like nothing is happening. These moments can be incredibly frustrating and disheartening, but they are also opportunities for faith to grow. Waiting teaches us patience, dependence, and trust. It reminds us that God's timing is perfect, even when it doesn't align with our own. Faith gives us the strength to hold on, to keep believing, and to keep hoping, even when the fulfillment of God's promises feels far away. Faith also gives us the resilience to endure trials. Life is full of challenges, and some of them can feel overwhelming. But faith reminds us that we are not defined by our struggles. We are defined by the God who walks with us through them. Faith doesn't eliminate the pain or difficulty of trials, but it gives us the strength to persevere. It allows us to see beyond the immediate circumstances and trust that God is working all things together for our good. It reminds us that no matter how dark the night, morning will come, and with it, the light of God's faithfulness. Faith is not something we muster up on our own. It is a gift from God. It grows as we spend time in His Word, as we pray, and as we reflect on His faithfulness in our lives. Each time we step out in faith, each time we trust Him in a new way, our faith is strengthened. It's like a muscle that grows with use. The more we rely on God, the more we experience His power and provision, and the more our faith deepens. Faith transforms the way we see ourselves and our circumstances. It shifts our focus from what we lack to what God provides. It helps us to see challenges as opportunities for growth and to view setbacks as setups for something greater. Faith gives us a perspective that goes beyond the immediate and the visible. It allows us to live with hope and expectancy, knowing that God is always at work, even when we cannot see it. Faith also impacts the way we relate to others. When we live by faith, we become sources of hope and encouragement to those around us. Our trust in God's promises inspires others to trust Him as well. Our stories of His faithfulness remind others of His power and love. Faith is not just a private journey, it is a communal one. As we share our faith, we strengthen the faith of others and create a ripple effect that extends far beyond ourselves. faith enables us to dream big. It frees us from the limitations of what seems possible and allows us to believe in the extraordinary. With faith, we are not constrained by the obstacles we see, but are empowered by the possibilities God has in store. Faith gives us the courage to pursue our God-given dreams, even when the path forward seems uncertain. It reminds us that with God, all things are possible and that He is able to do immeasurably more than we can ask or imagine. Faith also calls us to action. It's not just about believing, it's about living in a way that reflects that belief. Faith moves us to step out of our comfort zones, to take risks, and to trust God in new ways. It challenges us to love others, to serve selflessly, and to live with integrity. Faith is not passive, it is active and dynamic. It changes how we live, how we make decisions, and how we impact the world around us. Living by faith doesn't mean we won't face opposition or challenges. In fact, faith often requires us to stand firm in the face of resistance. But faith gives us the courage to stand, knowing that we are not standing alone. It reminds us that God is our defender, our strength, and our refuge. It gives us the assurance that no weapon formed against us will prosper, and that greater is He who is in us than he who is in the world. Faith is a journey, not a destination. It is something we grow in over time as we walk with God. There will be moments of doubt and struggle, but there will also be moments of victory and breakthrough. Each step of faith builds on the one before it, creating a foundation that becomes stronger and more unshakable. Faith is not about having it all figured out, it's about trusting the one who does. Faith allows us to live with a sense of peace and purpose. It reminds us that our lives are part of a greater story, one that is being written by the author of all creation. It gives us the confidence to face each day with hope and expectancy, knowing that God is at work in and through us. Faith allows us to embrace the present while looking forward to the future with trust in God's promises. Faith is what connects us to God's power. It is the channel through which His strength flows into our lives. It is what enables us to do things we could never do on our own, to overcome obstacles that seem insurmountable, and to persevere in the face of adversity. Faith is not about relying on our own abilities, but about relying on God's. It is about recognizing that His power is made perfect in our weakness and that He is able to do what we cannot. Faith is not just about what we receive from God, it's also about what we give. It calls us to give of ourselves, to invest in others, and to trust God with our resources. Faith reminds us that we serve a God who multiplies what we offer, who uses our small acts of obedience to accomplish great things. It teaches us to live with open hands, trusting that God will provide for our needs as we seek to meet the needs of others. Faith is the foundation of a life lived for God. It is what allows us to trust Him in the midst of uncertainty, to persevere in the face of challenges, and to step into the fullness of His plans for us. It is not a one-time decision, but a daily choice, a continual surrender to His will and His ways. Faith reminds us that we are never alone, that God is always with us, and that His power is at work in every area of our lives. When we come to the end of a reflection as profound as this, it's vital to pause and let the gravity of what we've discussed settle deeply into our hearts. The assurance that God is for us is not just a concept to be admired from a distance, but a living reality meant to transform our lives. It's an anchor in the storm, a light in the darkness, and a foundation upon which we can build our existence with unshakable confidence. This truth, this profound, life-altering truth, has the power to shape how we think, how we act, and how we move forward into every tomorrow that awaits us. When we truly believe that God is for us, it changes everything. It changes how we see ourselves. No longer do we have to live under the weight of insecurity or the pressure to measure up to standards that were never meant for us. Instead, we walk in the freedom of knowing we are deeply loved and unconditionally accepted. We are no longer defined by our mistakes, our failures, or the limitations imposed by others. We are defined by the one who created us, the one who calls us His own. This identity liberates us from the chains of comparison and self-doubt, allowing us to step boldly into the fullness of who God made us to be. This assurance also transforms how we see our challenges. Life will always have its battles, its struggles, and its moments of pain. But when we know God is for us, we don't have to face them alone. We can stand firm even when the winds of adversity blow against us, because we are grounded in a truth that transcends the temporary. This doesn't mean the challenges will disappear or that life will suddenly become easy, but it does mean that we can face them with the resilience and courage that comes from knowing the outcome is already in God's hands. We can face each trial with the confidence that every step is part of a greater purpose, that every struggle is shaping us, refining us, and preparing us for something far greater than we can imagine. When we carry this truth in our hearts, it also changes the way we relate to others. If God is for us, then we are free to be for others. We are no longer driven by competition or the fear of scarcity. Instead, we can live with open hands, freely giving and receiving because we trust in God's abundant provision. This freedom allows us to celebrate the successes of others, to offer grace when it's needed, and to be a source of encouragement and love in a world that desperately needs it. We become conduits of God's love, reflecting his character in the way we interact with those around us. This assurance also gives us the courage to dream bigger than we ever thought possible. When we know God is for us, we're not limited by what we can see or understand. We are free to step out in faith, to pursue the dreams and callings that God has placed in our hearts, even when they seem impossible. Knowing that the creator of the universe is on our side empowers us to take risks, to move beyond our comfort zones, and to embrace the adventures God has prepared for us. It reminds us that we are not walking this path alone and that his strength is made perfect in our weakness. Faith is the thread that ties all of this together. It is the foundation upon which we stand, a bridge that connects us to the promises of God. Faith is not just about believing in something, it's about believing in someone, believing in God's character, his love, and his power. It's about trusting him enough to follow where he leads, even when the way is uncertain. Faith is what enables us to live with confidence, knowing that the God who is for us is also the God who goes before us, paving the way and preparing us for what lies ahead. This confidence doesn't mean that we will never face fear or doubt. It doesn't mean that every step will be easy or that every question will have an immediate answer. But it does mean that we can face those moments with the assurance that God is greater, greater than our fears, greater than our doubts, greater than anything that stands against us. This assurance is not a fleeting feeling, but a deep, abiding certainty that comes from knowing who God is and what he has promised. As we move forward, we must hold on to this truth tightly. It's not something to be left behind when life gets busy or challenges arise. It's a truth to be carried with us into every moment, every decision, and every interaction. It's the foundation that allows us to live with peace, purpose, and confidence no matter what life may bring. God's love for us is unchanging. His faithfulness is unwavering. His power is limitless. These are not just words, they are truths that we can build our lives upon. They are the reason we can walk through life with our heads held high and our hearts full of hope. They remind us that we are never alone, that we are never forgotten, and that we are always deeply loved. Let us go forth with this confidence, not as a boast in our own strength, but as a testimony to the greatness of the God we serve. Let us live lives that reflect his love, his grace, and his power. Let us face every challenge with courage, every opportunity with boldness, and every day with gratitude. And let us never forget that if God is for us, nothing, absolutely nothing can stand against us. What's your Goliath? What's the thing standing in your way? Whatever it is, don't be afraid. Don't back down. Step forward with faith because the God who is for you is greater than the enemy against you. Before I close, I want to leave you with this. When you know God is for you, you live differently. You move with purpose. You speak with power, and you love without fear. Because you understand that your victory isn't in what you see, it's in who you believe. So walk out of here tonight with your head high, your spirit strong, and your heart anchored in this truth. If God is for us, who can be against us? God bless you.